Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Contractor Radio episode. And this episode is a big one for us. This is our 100th episode. It is the day that we started this 2 years ago. And it's pretty cool to be doing the 100th episode on that day. And I've got somebody here today that I want to talk with because I think he's going to bring the most value to this conversation. We have been really working hard on making sure that what we do is extremely valuable to the contractors we work with. We know what contractors aspire to. They aspire to getting control of their business with systems and processes and the way they need to operate their foundational stuff, which gives them the ability to grow, which then helps them achieve the big thing they're after, which is personal and financial freedom. And today we want to talk about something very special, something that might be a little bit new to you, something you may not have heard before. You hear a lot of things going on out there that we're going to talk about that are what a lot of people coach and consult about and lead us to believe that this is what needs to happen. And we're going to fly in the face of that a little bit today. We want to share with you a little bit of what happens behind the scenes here at Contractor Coach Pro with our clients that we don't always share out there in the real world, and maybe a little bit of that secret sauce that makes us us and makes the contractors we work with them, and really the human beings that are behind those businesses and what makes them so impactful. So before we do that, we got to keep the lights on around here. We got to pay the bills. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors this morning, Atlas Roofing.
Now that you know and believe in how it's made, it's time to become an Atlas Pro Plus contractor. With Atlas, you get the selling power of Atlas shingles featuring Scotchgard, the brains of a top team of engineers creating quality shingles, and the time and money savings of HP 42. Sign up for a free Atlas Pro account. You'll get free digital tools, have access to financing, be able to request samples, shop the Pro Store, and more. Start installing entire Atlas systems to earn more Atlas bucks and provide your customers with even better warranties. The Atlas system includes Atlas roof shingles, WeatherMaster ice and water underlayment, Atlas synthetic or felt underlayment, Pro Cut starter shingles, and Atlas hip and ridge shingles. Once you have a Pro account and begin installing systems or shingles featuring Scotchgard protector, you can go to silver, gold, and platinum levels, getting even more benefits and rewards with each level. It only takes 15 Scotchgard systems or 1,500 squares to become silver status. Just remember to register those homeowners' warranties. Build your business, get more benefits, and earn more bucks. Plus, close more jobs using Atlas shingles featuring Scotchgard. Our shingles are designed and tested beyond industry standards in our R&D facility. Schedule sales training, shop our resources online, order marketing materials, and more today. Begin your Atlas Pro legacy now, or contact your local sales rep to learn about new programs available for trying Atlas.
Hey, welcome back, guys. I chose Atlas for a reason. They're a really good example of some of the things we're going to talk about today. If you are a roofer out there and you haven't checked out Atlas, I suggest you give them an opportunity, get into their Pro Contractor program, and close a few more deals than you might be doing today. Now, I started this off with this is our 100th episode. And there's a reason that I'm in this vein of what I do. 8 years ago, I resigned from a job that I love very much. I was extremely passionate about and had a lot of purpose behind and all of that. And I don't know why, really. It was just one of those things that I had to do. And I know now, then I did not know why. And the reason that I resigned is there was a lack of alignment for me between who I was and what I did and the purpose behind that. And I didn't realize it at the time. After I resigned, that next day, my grandfather went into the hospital, and I got to spend the last 3 months of his life with him. And he is one of the most special people on the planet. To me, he has had the biggest impact on me as a human being. And he is what I call country smart. He never had a job that he made more than $24,000 a year, but he still ended up with quite a bit to share with his kids whenever he did pass away. And we were sitting there in his hospital room, and instead of him being concerned about himself and everything that he was going through, he was concerned about me, and he asked me a question. The question is, what are you going to do now? And I said, really, I don't know. I think I'm just going to go golf and fish. He's like, that's not you. You might do that for a little while, but you're not done yet. What are you going to do? What do you really want to be, or who do you want to really be? And I remember thinking about that for a moment, and that's about how long it took. And I went, hey, what do I like? And what do I like? Hey, I got the world's my oyster. I want to be a college basketball coach. He started laughing. He's like, you're 42 years old. I don't know of too many 42-year-old people that start their coaching careers at that point, unless they have some major connections. And he asked me something that really stuck with me and made me stop for a second. He asked me, he's like, hey, is it the basketball or is it the coaching that you like? And what that told me is he knew me better than I knew me. And I told him I had to think about that. And I came back to him the next day and I said, hey, I thought about it. And it's not the basketball, it's the coaching. I've coached sports, I've coached businesses, I've coached sales teams, all kinds of different things. And I get the same level of enjoyment out of it. He goes, okay, what are you great at? Question number 2. And that didn't take me long to really think about. And I said, hey, I'm pretty darn good at this contracting thing. And then he came to the conclusion, like, you should go do that. Go coach contractors, show them how to do what they need to do this right and be successful. And it was his idea behind all of this coaching stuff. And little did I realize then what I know now is those questions are questions that we have kind of embedded into what we do here at Contractor Coach Pro. So today is going to be a little bit of a different format for this episode. I am going to bring in my best friend, my right-hand man here at Contractor Coach Pro, the guy that I like to have these conversations with. And I want to give you guys a little shot behind the scenes of how we really go through these tough questions and figuring out, what we can actually get behind and believe in. And so I want to welcome to the show the other head coach, Nathan Tebedo. Nathan, welcome aboard, man.
Hello, best friend. I don't know if I've heard that yet.
I told you I was going to surprise you.
Oh man! Wow! Now I'm blushing and goodness.
Well, you are. Whenever I am working on something, noodling something out, really kind of thinking things through, I don't go to those guys that are like my buddies from high school and stuff that I hang out with, because they're going to be, them. But I go to you and you go to me, and we have some pretty intense conversations. And I think a lot of wake up moments where we click to something like, oh man, now that we've talked that through, I kind of see it. And so today I want to talk through something with you. We're going to go back and forth in a conversational approach. And I want to ask if people are starting in the right place. I mean, there's a book out there about this. There's a book about you're an entrepreneur. You're going to build some kind of crazy, amazing, awesome, high achieving business. So you got to start with
why? Is that
start with why? And while there's a lot of value in that, I don't want to discount it, right? Like there's a lot of value in knowing that. I want to challenge that concept a bit today with where I think you really need to start and what makes the why that actually works so powerful. We see so many people out there that they do this. They go through this whole process and they go, hey, this is why I'm doing this. I'm growing leaders, or I'm putting water wells in Africa, or I'm whatever, right? And they get all excited about it, and it holds for a little while, but they keep not achieving it. And they still feel pressure. They still feel passionate about it. They're still going for it, but it is just not happening for them. And I wonder how many businesses are actually out there like that, where I've got this big thing that I'm after and I want to solve the world's problems, but for whatever reason, it's not happening. Do you see much of that, Nathan, you personally?
I mean, I do, and I would say that, and you've seen this too with our coaching. It's one of the most difficult exercises for business owners to go through. Very, very few. Now, every once in a while, I'll bump into somebody who just kind of knows this already about themselves, but it's rare. When we
1 or 2%.
we sit somebody down and we say, "Why are you doing this?" Like, I'll be honest with you. You know, when you open a business, it's one of the riskiest possible things you could do, right? Such a high percentage of failure, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a construction company. It could be almost any type of business. The rate of failure for opening a business is huge. This is an extraordinarily risky thing because you pour everything you have into it and it might fail. So if the question is just money and security, opening your own business is a terrible decision. Like, just, and then what's funny too is, like, if it's all about freedom, opening your own business is probably a terrible decision too, because you can get a job where you have lots of freedom and time. And if you perform well, that's part of the things that you get. But when you open a business, that thing owns you, and it owns you for a significant amount of time until you're able to, you know, it's an extraordinary, in other words, what I'm saying is you could get to a respectable level of freedom in your life much quicker, probably working for someone else than starting your own business. Because when you start your business, that thing owns you. So when we talk to these guys and we go, why are you doing this? I have found that to be one of the most difficult conversations and things for people to bring about. I'm sure you've had that experience.
Yeah, you know, it usually comes out as something like, well, I want to build a, $100 million business, or, I want to help people grow and become leaders. Like, that was a little bit deeper, a little bit more insightful. Some of them can be very altruistic, that I want to go put water wells in Africa, or build an animal shelter, or whatever the thing may be. And even those, we've seen through our experience that they come up with the ones that feel and sound good and is what they may believe the world wants of them.
Or whatever it takes to keep their coach from pestering them about it.
Yeah, it could be that too, keep their coach from pestering them. But it's not, it doesn't quite resonate. And I want to talk about that today, of why it might not resonate. But before I do that, I want to ask you a question. When you were in middle school, high school, what were you dreaming about doing?
What's funny is when I was younger, my dad was actually something of a thought leader, and actually led something of a movement that ended up becoming kind of national. And he ended up going on TV and doing speaking events and things like that. And as a kid, I saw that, and I saw other people. I was a little bit weird. Like, I saw other speakers and presenters and thought leaders. And as you say this, like, I remember being younger and thinking, that's cool. This person is helping other people. They're coming up with ideas. They're implementing systems and concepts, and they're changing people's lives. And I remember thinking to myself, I think that would be cool. Now, this is like middle school, early teenage years. As I got a little bit older, like my later teenage years, I started thinking, man, I can own my own business. I know I can do that. And so that kind of shifted. But what's funny is it kind of came back around full circle. And I remember watching my dad speak, and I remember thinking that's really, really cool. I would love to be able to impact people's lives with my brain, and solve problems and help people grow. And I was like, I don't know, probably 8, 10, 12 years old when I started to see that and started to recognize that concept.
So a couple observations about one of the things is like, there's a reason you're here, right? Like that's part of it is like, hey, this was maybe something that you aspired to, spoke to you early on, and you see some opportunity maybe to do some of that. Kind of fills you a little bit, possibly, but then you reeled back off of it a bit, and you went, okay, instead of that, I can go open a business, do it at a small scale, right? Like a small scale of this big thing that I'm seeing out there. And we tend to, and you didn't own a business right away. You went to work for your dad's business, right?
Well, I started as a subcontracted laborer actually at 15 years old. I wasn't technically an employee until I was in my mid 30s, I think was my first actual employment, which was actually when you and I started working together. But from when I started in the workforce at age 13 till the age of 31, 32, I was a 1099 for everybody I dealt with, whether it was my dad or with crews that I worked with or the company that we opened. But
did you look at yourself as a business like a 1099, or did you look at yourself more as an employee of your dad's business?
Well, I always looked at myself as my own independent operating unit. And I did that even when I became an employee. And I just, for whatever reason, the guys that I worked with were really clever in letting me know, look, Nathan, you run your life. You can work when you want to, not work when you want to. You can participate. We know you're a hard worker, so we trust you. But you should know that from here on out, as you're in the labor force, you are in control of who you work for and when you work for them and for how much you work for them. And so I was very fortunate in some of the guys. Like, I didn't have these guys that just wanted to pull me in as an employee and then just micromanage everything I did. Most of my career was me going, okay, do I want to do this? I didn't care whether it was 1099 or W-2. I just knew that I could be in charge of that. And so even when I went into employment negotiations, I always saw it as a negotiation. I never saw myself as walking into a situation with no power. Now,
you're a bit of a different bird, and I think you would admit that yourself.
I'm a weirdo.
Do you think most kids in middle school and high school were thinking about speaking in public or owning their own business? Maybe some owning their own business, but I would think most were, I'm going to be a firefighter. I'm going to be an athlete.
Sure.
I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a lawyer. Like this big, high aspiration.
Well, now it's like TikTok superstar,
YouTube influencer, like all that stuff, right?
That wasn't around when I was a kid, so those weren't options.
Which may very well be options. And so I want to talk about this from two sides today. There's the human individual side, and then there's the business side. And I think there's some alignment between those two things. So what happened, right? Like what happens to most of us? We have these big aspirations. I can remember, man, I dreamed of being a professional baseball player, and that didn't work out. And I was like, I got to go get a job, and I'm going to keep working that job to try and make that thing work out later. Like I got to go do this. And still that dream is there. But everyday life, everyday work, everyday everything led me on a different path. The question was the dream the right dream? Being a professional baseball player? Or was it something else and I just wasn't clicking to it yet? And so coming back to the business side of it for a second, well, actually, let's stay with the personal side. I go do events all the time. And one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what's your purpose? But that's a secondary question. It's a secondary question to get to the real question I want to get figured out. But that first question I asked that's really secondary to what I'm shooting for, the majority of the time, I don't get an answer. And if I do, they've thought about it for a little bit, and it tends to be like what I did with my grandfather. It tends to be a very shoot from the hip. I thought of a couple things I liked. I want to do that, right? Have you experienced any of that with whenever you're coaching clients or talking with one of your buddies or just people in general?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we get preached at a lot about setting goals and breaking them down into smaller pieces, right? And then you got to get in the grind and the hustle, and you got to work hard, and all that stuff's great, but if you think, like, you remember either being a kid or having a kid or having, like, I've got nieces and nephews, and there's always that age or that point at which they get into that why, right? And they go, why is that happening? Well, because of this. Why is that happening? Well, because of this. Why? Because of this. Why? Because of this, right? And you can go down that path eventually. You can go down that path with your, I don't know, probably your 3, 4, 5-year-old. And then at some point you hit a stop. And it's like, okay, kid, well, that's the way that it is.
It's just because
right?
It's blue. The sky is blue because it's blue.
That's right. Because when you look at it, it's blue. Yeah. And so, what's interesting is it's such a curious component to a 4 or 5-year-old. They want to understand what's going on and why a thing is the way that it is. And then I think sometimes we quit asking ourselves those questions as we get older. We get old, we get crusty, we get set in our ways. And we quit asking ourselves why. And as an example, like with the coaching, entrepreneurs, almost all of them have these giant dreams. And I can't tell you the number of times I've asked somebody, like, what's your dream? What are you trying to do with this business? And I hear something like, I want to have a 20 or 30 or 50, I've heard $100 million company. And I love that. I'm like, okay, cool. Why? So I get to be a 5-year-old again. And it's so funny because it's such a simple question, but it stumps this very intelligent, very motivated, very hardworking person, stumps them. I've yet to ask somebody, why do you want a $100 million company, and have them go, well, because this is why. And it have be a legit reason. Because here's what I can tell you. If you and your wife or your husband or your family have these goals, like, well, we'd like to have a really nice home. We want to be out of debt. We want a place on the lake. We want a boat. We want decent vacations. We want to be able to fly. But I tell you what, you don't need a $100 million company to do that. You can do that with a $2 or $3 million company, like way less to provide all these things that you set forth for your family. So then the question, so when you get down and you go, well, how much money do you need? If you're making $500 to $1 million a year, you and your family probably have the resources to do pretty much anything and everything you want. Okay, great. So let's just say we get you to $1 million a year or 500 grand. Okay. And you're going to hit that number. You're going to hit that number, depending on how efficient you are, at probably less than 10 million. So once you hit that number, and you've kind of got these things that you guys were after, what's going to keep you attacking this $100 million goal when you still have 95 million to go?
Yeah, that's the thing. And we see it over and over again, especially when people are about a number. And we tend to, really and truthfully, like, if we were going to get down to brass tacks, we really like break people's dreams apart. They come in thinking one thing, and we're like, all right, so why not 95 or 105 million? Why is it 100 million? And then they'll kind of pause for a second. And a lot of times you'll get back, it's like some kind of achievement, or they've accomplished something, like that gets them in the top 10. Why is that important? Why is it important to be in the top 10? Do you feel like you need to prove something to somebody? Is that really what's going on? And we're digging is what we're doing. And we're trying to break that dream down to better serve the human.
Well, you've experienced that. Right. Yeah. So I don't think your company didn't get to like 100 million or whatever, but you built one of those top 3% sized companies, between 20 and 30 plus whatever million a year. And you did that over some consecutive years. Right. So you actually went through that experience of having a company that you kind of got to like a couple million, and you got to a few more million, and you were like, whew, here we go. Right. You kind of did this thing that a lot of people want coaching to learn how to do. And you had some of those things. You were able to probably get some of the vehicles you wanted and the house you wanted and some of that stuff. Right. Like you got to, what was that experience like for you when some of the goals that you and Michelle had got met, and you had some of the toys, you had a beautiful place to live, and you were hitting some of those big numbers. Like, what was that like for you? Were you like, oh, great, well, now it's time to push to 50, or it's time to push to 70, time to push to 100? What was that like for you?
I have told this story before. It was kind of a breakdown moment for me, because I was sitting there like literally looking out at, we have a very nice log home on a lot of property in Wisconsin with all the toys and everything you could imagine, and none of them being used all that much. I had a boat there that was like a $80,000 boat that we didn't use for 3 years. Like, it didn't touch the water. And I can remember asking myself, what more do I have to get? What more do I have to get to say I made it, to prove everybody wrong, to whatever was actually really driving me at that point? And it wasn't any of that. I really had, I don't know if you want to call it a nervous breakdown, a mental breakdown. I really think it was
An
God.
existential crisis.
Existential crisis. Yes, I really think it was God pounding on me, and I had a prayerful moment. And because what I realized that day, and you just heard me say it multiple times, everything was about me. I.
Did you recognize that though? I mean, I know you had this moment, right? But what I'm saying though is that prior to that, was your mind thinking, my purpose is to fulfill what I want through all my stuff?
No. What I was thinking about is that all the haters didn't think I could do it, so I was going to prove them wrong. That was my purpose. It was, and there's that word "I" again, right? I was going to prove them wrong, and so everything was a tool to me, and I was aware of that. I was mindful of it. But what I realized that day, the thing that changed in my life, is that it was not who I was. Who I was has always been the same thing from the day one till today. And inside of me, I care. I care about people. I care about my fellow human being. Even though my actions may not show that at certain points in my life, that was where the disconnect was, or the friction. This friction was happening between what I thought my purpose was and who I was. And I think that's where we need to start. I think we need to start with who. Because once I realized that I cared about people, that I could inspire people to achieve things that they didn't think was possible, that they didn't think they had the potential to do, and that I could do that through serving instead of taking, the whole world shifted for me. And it became a lot less about gathering things, and it became much more about being generous with something that I had as a talent that I could freely give. And I could give it at work. I could give it at church. I could give it to the guy I passed on the street, all the time, every day, all day long.
So this is what I'm hearing, because I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback on that.
Good.
It sounds to me like that was actually a shift in purpose. Like you had a purpose in mind that you were going to prove the haters wrong. You were going to prove the people who didn't believe in you wrong. You were going to achieve more than people thought you could achieve. You were going to beat your chest a little bit and be like, "Aha, I am Jim Johnson, hear me roar." Right? And then it sounds like there was a shift, because it doesn't sound like your initial desire was to serve per se. You can care about people and still be pretty self-centered, but it sounded like that initial purpose was probably to prove to yourself, I'm guessing, a little bit, as well as to prove to the haters that you can do it. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you realized, I did do it. Like, here I am looking at all this stuff. I don't get to use it, and I don't get to use it or do anything with it, but I got this beautiful property, this beautiful house. And then something clicked that shifted your your purpose? It sounds like a desire change, because you had this desire to prove everybody wrong. And then all of a sudden that desire took a bit of a pivot.
Okay, so I get to challenge back. Was it truly my desire? The original, it served me well. Don't get me wrong. That drive and the haters and all the other stuff served me very well from an outside perspective. From people looking at Jim Johnson and Michelle Johnson, they would see us and go, wow, those two really have it together. They got this amazing business. They've got all this stuff. I wish that I could be like them. But they didn't know how much friction there was on the inside with who I was versus what I was after. And so while, yes, the pivot happened from being after proving everybody wrong to being after serving everybody, the who was still there. And that who is what I had to figure out.
What actually fulfilled Jim Johnson, right? Like, you thought this thing was going to fulfill you. And then all of a sudden you realized, okay, that actually doesn't fulfill me. So there's even a deeper why, right? Like
if I would have known who I was before that moment, I would have never gone through those things.
Do you think you still would have built what you did?
I think I would have built something better. I think I would have built something better, more powerful, more impactful, and I likely would still be doing it today.
Because it would continue to be fulfilling. See, that's an interesting thing. Because when I coach some of my folks too, like, I tell people about the stuff that I've learned prior to coaching and the stuff that I know in coaching and the resources that we provide. And I tell people all the time, like, man, if I had this stuff, if I'd have had these resources and stuff, like when I was 16, 17, 18, my life would look radically different, probably from a freedom and financial standpoint. However, I'm not convinced I wouldn't still be doing what I'm doing now.
Exactly. Because first off, we said it earlier, you're a little bit weird, different bird. And so Nathan's what I call old soul. Like you think, you take time. And that's really what I want to get across to a lot of people today, is to take some time. Get into a quiet place, get all the distractions and all the other BS that goes on in our world that we're just constantly hearing noise, and do like my friend Reggie Brock says, and just get quiet. Listen to that inner voice. A lot of us are avoiding it. We're avoiding that inner voice because we don't want to hear what it has to say. But if you'll take the time to get thinking in that vein, whether you're a spiritual person or not, you're going to hear some things. You're going to hear some things that might be friction and you need to do something about them. You might hear some things that are, hey, I'm really more in line with this than that. Lean into that. That's the thing. Like, lean into that. And once you kind of get there, I don't care what you do. If you're a roofer, a sprinkler guy, a lawyer, a CPA, when you know the who, like what really gets you going, it's going to go very, very well, because you're going to imbue that into everything in your business. Because I strongly believe that everybody on this planet has drive. I think everybody on this planet has drive, and they're sitting there a lot of the time going, I don't know what to be driven to. I don't know what I'm about. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know my reason for being here. I don't know my meaning, my purpose, and all of those things. And a lot of that has to do with because they don't know who they are. But if they would take some time to think about that, to meditate on it, to reflect on it, to really think about what gives them joy.
Well, and honestly, like you mentioned Reggie earlier, he literally started a podcast around this topic. Now, his is a bit more intense, so I definitely recommend people go check out Live Exposed podcast. I'm gonna pump that right now. Like, no sponsorship there, just hey, go check out our man Reggie Brock and his podcast, because it's amazing, and he really delves into this concept. And I think a little bit of what we're talking about here, though, is that like that is probably what Reggie's talking about is more step one to figuring out your why. I read the Simon Sinek book, and I thought it was a good book. It was well written. Okay. One of the things about this concept, and so for you business owners, as you're listening to this, and Jim, you can help me out with this too a little bit, is one of the major components of the things that he says in this book is, and if Simon Sinek listens to this, sorry, buddy, but you DM me, which I doubt he listens to this. He says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That's what he says inside the book. Problem is, I don't agree with that. Now, I think it is true in general. I'll give you a couple quick examples. Okay. And you guys you can tell me, Jim, where you fall on this. There's a company out there that builds like fishing apparel. And it was a brother-sister couple, and they were their own models for their own clothing. And I don't know how I randomly bumped into who these people are. It was probably a Facebook ad or something that they were cleverly putting out there. But they had a product on there, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And as I looked in, it was like brother, sister, just starting an apparel company specifically for like water sports. And I was out in hanging out at my in-laws' lake place a lot at the time. And I was like, that looks like a cool thing that I would like. Reading their story, I'm like, that's super cool. That makes me want to buy their product even more. So I buy their product. Product's great. Bought some products for my wife. Okay. I dug their story and I liked what they were about. Okay. So I kind of bought their why, certainly, because I liked what they were all about. Juxtaposition. Okay. Apple, the technology company. Okay. Apple builds all these different products and all these different tools. And Apple is kind of, a lot of people hold Apple up as the pinnacle of establishing their why and having a story and a brand that they continually reinforce over and over again. Here's what I can tell you. It doesn't jive with me at all. For whatever reason, I don't click with Apple. Now, I'm not doing the Apple Android BS. Like I just now I don't mind their product. I mean, their products are good. They're solid, but like, I don't buy their why. That's just doesn't click for me. Okay. What's interesting is that back in the day, they did that commercial where they were trying to mimic 1984, where everybody was standing in line, like a bunch of drones. And then they had a guy with an iPhone wandering around. What I think is funny, just as a joke, is like whenever somebody releases the new iPhone, guess what the iPhone people do? I think I'll stand in one big giant line waiting for their iPhone. Anyway, I'm not trying to hate on Apple, but here's what I will say, right? Don't click with their why. I have an iPad. I love this thing. I don't buy their why at all. I truly, in my opinion, the iPad is the best friggin' tablet on the market. I buy their what. And I don't.
I have literally purposely tried to buy other tablets because I don't jive with their why. And every time I come back to the iPad because it's the best version. It is the what that I'm buying.
So that whole concept, as I read that book, that concept put me into a little bit of a tailspin because as a somewhat philosophical thinker, I tend to think that real value tends to come from the inside out, not the outside in. But that one, it just threw me for a loop because like I don't really click with Apple, but I love my iPad. So I'm like, is what he's saying in this book right or wrong?
So I think the title of the book should have been different. I think the title of the book should have been Know Your Why, not necessarily Start with Your Why. Because I think Steve Jobs knew who he was. I think he was very in touch with who he was. And because of who he was, Apple achieved some great things. And this is how I know this is a fact. It's not because of their why. It was because of his who. Because when you took him out of the equation, what happened to Apple?
They had problems.
So he was very in touch with who he was. And because of that who, he was able to make the why happen. Because it was aligned with him.
How do you think that translates to, how do you think these concepts we're kicking around, how do you think that translates to an entrepreneur?
It's funny that you say that, because the only thing that I can really use as a current example for that, because I'm not in the businesses like I would be if I owned it, with the people that we coach. I can watch them. Okay. So we watch them, we stay up to date with them, we hold them accountable, and we're engaged with them because there are people, they're our community. And I can see the ones that connected with the who that I've coached. Like I've gone to that level and that depth and peeled that onion all the way back, broke all of the dreams that they thought they had down to, hey, is that really what you're after? How does that make you feel if you do that? Like, really and truthfully, what's that going to give you whenever you get done? And we get down to it. And one of the best examples would be AVCO with Heath Hicks. He's very aligned with his who, which is why his company has done what it's done, following the purpose they're after, because that purpose is who he is inside. And because of who he is inside, he attracts people much like that get aligned with that purpose, and they're all charging towards the same thing. I think it is literally in our business, like infused in Contractor Coach Pro, because I just talked about how, like, my who I am is a person that inspires others to achieve their potential. I inspire them to believe in themselves. Our purpose that I did not come up with, but did as a team with you guys, is empowering people to believe. If you don't think my who has a lot to do with our why, I would argue that till the cows come home. Because my who attracted people that are much like me. And we're all about that. We're all about empowering people to believe in themselves, believe in their business. And hopefully through all of that and seeing our actions and how we handle ourselves, our behaviors and our core values, believing that there's a higher power out there that's got our best interest at heart.
What's interesting too is that empowering people to believe was a pivot from our previous kind of purpose statement, which was coaching contractors to win. And so what I think is interesting is that, like, that previous purpose statement was, I think, much more clear about our how. Like, this is how we do things. We coach contractors to win. This is what we're all about. This is what we do. And I think people would hear that and they go, oh, okay, I get it. So they're contractor coaches, and they want to help us win at whatever it is we're chasing. Great purpose statement for the purposes of marketing. So now we have this purpose statement, empowering people to believe. That's less clear, I think. If somebody hears that, they go, what do you mean? Like, you're going to have to explain that to me. And I think one of the tricks, though, is that I think that purpose statement that we have now, I think, speaks more to us internally. And it's not necessarily a marketing tool, because there's no clear marketing message or brand story in empowering people to believe. It's more of an internal inspiration about who we are and what we're about. And we can come up with all kinds of other cool sayings that we can put out there into the world that help to explain who we are and what we do, right? Like growth, control, freedom. That's kind of a part of our what we're after in our brand story and what we provide our clients. Empowering people to believe is the thing that comes to my mind when I get out of bed in the morning. I actually don't think control, growth, freedom. I get out of bed and I go, in one way or another, I need to empower my team. I got to empower my clients. I want to empower our industry. I want to empower my community and the people around me to believe, right? And that's the thing that's in my mind, though our brand story is a little bit different.
That's because it's who we are. I think people get some insight into who we are and why we do what we do from empowering people to believe. I think they knew how we did it with coaching contractors to win. And a little bit of the what. So the what and the how kind of go together, it sounds like. And the who and the why go together. And they don't necessarily have to be front facing. Like, our front facing stuff right now, really our marketing stuff, like the way to, like, hopefully get a bit of engagement from the community out there is, you're sitting there as a contractor and you're looking for control in your business. You're wearing all the hats. It's chaos. There's drama. Systems are broken. Everybody's doing it different ways, which is just causing it to be worse and worse and worse. You want to solve that problem. You want control. And then once you get that control, you want to do what it was you set out to do with your business in the first place and grow that thing. And then it's various different reasons for why you want to grow it. It could be that you have some personal aspirations that you want to retire or you want to sell it, or it could be very outward inspiration, which is to help people grow, to solve a world's problem, whatever it may be. But then in the very end, it's like this: hey, you're looking for freedom. You're looking for the freedom to be who you are, with who you want to be, where you want to be, when you want to do it. That's really what we're all kind of chasing. But if we don't figure out who we are, even if we achieve everything we thought we were going to achieve and set out to do and set as a goal and all that other good stuff, it just doesn't feel right.
Do you think it's apparent to me that figuring out kind of who you are is a process? I mean, I'm 41, wouldn't call myself a spring chicken. I'm also not particularly old yet, but I have a better understanding of what I am now than I did when I was like 22, 25. So I've got a clear understanding. Do you think why? Well, first of all, do you see that yourself? And then second of all, why do you think we don't just know automatically?
First off, I don't think we're challenged to know. I don't think we're asked to know. I don't think it's something that is something that's talked about very much. Now, I'm observant, and whenever I'm starting to think about something, it's just like when you buy a car. You buy a car, and you're driving the car down the road, and you start to see all the other cars out there, kind of like you, right? That same car I got. Never saw them before. But man, there's a billion of them now. Well, we've been doing this for a while now, and I didn't notice the cars. I didn't see others really doing what we were doing. But now all of a sudden there's a few other cars out there. Reggie with what he's doing. I could not be happier for that man. I'll tell you another one, Eric Obrecht. Talk about being authentic to who you are. I mean, that's the title of his deal. Well, I can't say the title of his deal on our podcast, but his is authentic. Let's just put it that way.
CFO.
And there are others talking about this. We're not the only people talking about this. And I'm starting to see more. I interviewed a guy, Ryan Kettering, that had some of this on his mind. We had a guy in our contractor fellowship deal. Like, it was shock to me because I'm like, this is the stuff we're talking about. And it's kind of like spring is just coming out of winter. And that little wildflower just popped up. There's a little wildflower, and like, oh, there's a wildflower. That's pretty neat. That's cool. Spring is on its way. And then there was another wildflower and another one. And I'm hoping that we see a field full of wildflowers going, hey, we got to figure this out. We got to figure out this who, because I think when we get to our who, the selfish goes to selfless. I think really inside most human beings, we're not about ourselves, not as much as we think. What do you think about that? And if that's true, which I'm not 100% certain of just yet, but if that's true, that if we're listening to what's happening inside of us and who we are internally, and internally we really do want to serve, bring joy, inspire, whatever your talent may be, if that's truly what we are wired to do, how much could that change what's going on in our world today? The division, the angst, the you're over there and I'm over here. I think that's outside. I think the outside world has crept into our inside being and caused this division. I think we're chasing a lot of things that don't align with our who. They're all aligned with what?
My take's a little different on that. I think that people act in accordance with what they truly believe. I think that people they'll tell you something different, but their actions are, I think most people, their actions are very much aligned with what they actually believe in. Now, what you believe may shift and change over time, but I don't believe that we truly act against our own self-interest. Now, like somebody might say, well, you do things you don't want to do. And I'm like, not necessarily. Like, I don't enjoy brushing my teeth. I'm not like, oh, this is just the greatest thing on the planet. This is amazing, right? No, I don't want my teeth to fall out of my head. So there's another thing behind why I brush my teeth. I like my teeth and I like to keep them there. So we don't like going to work. No, we don't, but we do like paying our bills and we like having a couple bucks in our pocket. Okay. And I think that what people generally will act in accordance with their beliefs. Now, sometimes their beliefs get challenged. And I think the best way for somebody's beliefs to get challenged, quite frankly, is in this type of a format. I don't think jumping on Twitter or Facebook is a great way to do it. You would say something to somebody that you might get punched for, but you'll do it online, but you wouldn't do it face to face. And so that, I think, has this weird effect on human beings. And so I think people should get their beliefs challenged. They should be open to those things. And I think the power of your own thinking should come, like, if you postulate an idea, can you argue against your own idea with your own mind? Can you act like somebody who doesn't believe in your idea and break it down? That power, like if somebody came to me and said, well, Nathan believes this, and if I could argue against myself as strong as somebody else, now I have the ability to do some really powerful self-reflection, and I can even challenge my own beliefs. But very often I hear somebody say something, I'm like, that's interesting. I don't know if I agree with that, but now I got to sit and think about it. But I don't think that if people just start peeling the onion of themselves, they're going to find this beautiful little gold nugget at the center.
Okay, I'm going to challenge that back. When you first said it, you said what they truly believe is what they act on. And I would agree with that at that time and in that place, they truly believe in this thing, so they take these actions. But when it all comes to the end or the fruition or the achievement or whatever you want to call it, or even sometimes during that journey, there's doubt, depression, fear, just you don't think it's right. You're uncomfortable in a bad way, not a good way. What you believe in isn't aligned with who you are. You said it yourself. Our beliefs change over time. We challenge ourselves and we think about it. We take some time, we spend some time on ourselves, and we challenge this belief that I believe that I'm supposed to prove to everybody that they were wrong, and I'm going to show them. I challenged that belief, and my belief became something else. It was time to start serving. And as soon as that pivot was made, the who in me really came out. The who in me was having friction, and now it was no longer having friction. I wake up every day excited as heck to get out there and do some amazing things. What we're working on right now, the things that are going on in our business, I have not been this excited in a long time. Just to be talking about this today, it brings me amazing amounts of joy. To have a conversation like this that kind of pulls the veil back a little bit on what happens here inside of our building, and these conversations that we have that are not only focused on us internally and our contractors externally, but the human being in general. Everybody. We want to have impact above and beyond just our coaching thing. Like, it's great. Don't get me wrong, man. We want you contractors to be successful, generate income, grow as much as you want to grow, and achieve some amazing things.
But we don't want you to hit some of those big giant mile markers and still find yourself sitting on the side of your bed with a bottle and a gun.
And you say it that way, and we almost kind of joke about it, but it's the reality of it. I've had that phone call. I mean, literally had that phone call that I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And I'm like, you're calling the wrong guy. First off, let's start there. But if you're going to talk with me, put the gun down. Those are the moments that we do this for. Because that impact on that human being to help him find out who he really is versus the things he's trying to gain and achieve because he thinks that's what the outside world wants him to do. Those are the things that just, and I jump out of bed every morning. I'm getting up even earlier every day because I'm like, hey, we got things to do. We got people to help find themselves. We got people to break their dreams. We want to make it click, right? Like, hey, and I don't think that's a one-time moment in our lives. I don't think it's a moment where you go, I got it all figured out. I know who I am, and I know why I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm going to go do it. I think as we grow, because you talked about being younger, right? Like, why don't we know when we're younger? I think that subconsciously we know who we are, but it hasn't come out yet. And I think, funny enough, I think if more parents would really be observant of their kids, like, I know who my kids are because this is something I'm aware of. I'm mindful of it. I know who they are. And I can see them actually fulfilling all those things I thought they were going to be and who they are. And I can also see all the things where it's not lining up with who they really are because they're making the same mistakes and chasing the same things that I chased. But I can't go to them and tell them that. I can be there to listen and when that thing happens and bring in some insight. But kids and parents, they tend to do the opposite of whatever you say. I
tend to think that discovery, though, requires experience. I don't know that even if you put a bunch of focus on trying to discover who you are at the age of 15, like, I don't know that it's possible. Like, it'd be like me trying, it's like, so I like to run. It's just a thing. And there is this concept of a runner's high. And when you explain that to somebody, it's like, once you push past your initial energy level, and once your cardio rate starts to settle down a little bit and your heart rate becomes more even and your body is kind of like, oh, okay, we're doing this now and we're going to do this for a while. And like, we're going to run for an hour or 2 hours, and your brain and your body start to get that figured out. Like, it settles into this place. And then oftentimes you'll get this endorphin kick, and it's almost like you can't even feel yourself running. Right. So I'm explaining this. Somebody who's never done that does not know what I'm talking about. I can tell you, man, it's there. It's there. It's there. It's there. I'm going to tell you till I'm blue in the face. And you do not understand what it is I'm talking about till you've experienced it. And what's funny is, like, once you've experienced it, you kind of start chasing that dragon a little bit because it's nice. But like, somebody can't hear me say that and go, oh, okay, I get it. I understand why runners run. Like,
so are you saying it's not valuable to have that conversation without gaining some experience first?
No, I think the conversation should be had, right? But here's the thing, like, I can identify things happening in my life that my dad was like, hey, this is a thing, this is a thing, this is a thing. And I'm like, and I was not a disrespectful kid. I was like, okay, like, I believe you, Dad. I believe you, right? And as I got older, I was just like, Dad says these things. And then eventually things are happening. I'm like, oh. And then things happen. I'm like, oh, okay. I will say this, though. Some of those things that my dad said, like, this is happening, this is going to happen, some of those things didn't happen. And so I'm like, okay, well, my life went a little different direction than my dad's did. So even my dad's experience and his desire to enhance me with his experience in life didn't turn out the same. So I didn't experience some of the same things he did. But many of the things I was like, that was a principle Dad was talking about. And I believed him, but I didn't get it. And then all of a sudden this thing or something occurs in my life. And I'm like, okay, I remember that. Dad was telling me that this is a kind of a thing that is in life, or a thing that happens with me as a man or whatever. And then boom, it happens. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. But as a kid, I was like, I couldn't relate to the concepts and experiences of a 38-year-old man, you know.
So what we're saying is you're not going to figure out the meaning of your life when you're 15.
I don't think so.
And I agree. I do agree, but I think you should take the first step. I think you should run that first mile. I think you should run that first 15 minutes. I think because each time you do that, you get a little better. There's a little click. You move forward. And because you move forward, there's now another click. But until you start taking those steps, you don't ever get to this point where you go, And who knows? Like, I think I got it figured out right now. I think I got it figured out that this is pretty much who I am and what I was designed to do.
Well, it's something I appreciate about a thing that Gary Vee has really been after. Gary Vaynerchuk kind of discovered a little bit where his messages were resonating, and his messages really started to resonate with people in their 20s, their mid 20s and early 30s, because he kept having these kids come up and be like, I'm at 30 and I don't know what my life is all about, and I'm not a millionaire and I haven't done, and he's going, slow down, dude. You're just getting into the good stuff. If you don't have $1 million by the time you're 27, like, nobody does.
That's right? Okay.
It's
okay.
It's okay. Right. Like, I heard this term the other day that I thought was interesting, and I'm going to go ahead and self-identify as a man. I don't know how true some of these things are for ladies, so I apologize. But I heard a saying that was like, and I don't know where it came from. 20s are for burning. Don't know if I agree with that entirely, but 20s are for burning, 30s are for learning, and 40s are for earning. And while I don't think you should just light your 20s on fire, right, because those repercussions could last a very long time, I think it has to do more with experience, energy, and wisdom and the application of it. Like, there's this, like, when you're young, you've got all this strength and exuberance and recovery, right? And your mind is wide open, okay? Sometimes it's super locked shut because they tell you, don't hire anybody till they're 16 because that's when they know everything. So you got all this energy and stuff going on, right? But sorry if you're out there and you're 22, you don't know anything. I mean, you may have a college degree, and that's super cool, and that's a great accomplishment. I would never knock it, but there's not a whole lot of wisdom or experience in there yet. And so you're just trudging through life doing, and then somewhere in your 30s, and like I said, I think I can relate to this as a guy, because this is how it went for me, and I know this resonates with other dudes I've talked to. Like, somewhere in your 30s, you start to identify experiences, and you start to go, oh, like, you start to learn some stuff. You're like, okay, all right, I'm connecting some dots in life here. I can see, like, how certain investments have certain return on investments. I can see, like, where I spend my time means that I'm not spending my time in other places. I need to start thinking about where I spend my time and what's important, right? And then for me, as I started transitioning into my late 30s, some of that experience, I was able to start coupling with the fact that I still have energy. Now, I don't recover it like I did when I was 22, physically, but I still have tons of energy. And now I'm starting to be able to combine that with some of the things that I'm learning. And then I'm super pumped about my 40s, because I still feel like I've got quite a bit of energy, but I'm starting to feel like there's more dots connecting for me as I grow. I don't know if that's any of, like, your experience. I mean, does that?
Yeah, I wasn't a burn it in the 20s. I was getting after it. I was in earn it mode. And that was maybe because I started a bit younger, but I don't think that's most people. I think I'm a little weird myself and of certain groups of things. But that shouldn't stop my desire to figure out what that is for me. I think everybody's different. We can't pigeonhole every human being into this.
No.
Boom, boom, boom. This is the way it goes. Right. I think the generality of it is pretty accurate. But what if people really started to think about it sooner?
I think the ladies are just waiting for us. They're probably way ahead. They're just like waiting for us idiots.
Yeah, they're just waiting on us to catch up. Yeah, but I question that too, because I get this opportunity. God has blessed me with this opportunity to get to go and hang out with all these companies and all these people, and that's really the thing, is the people. And almost every time I ask that question on the purpose thing, I tend to pick a young lady, and they have the same answer as the young guys.
Sure.
That, a big pause. And then whatever they come back with after thinking a little bit is pretty surface. I want to help people be healthier, which sounds great, altruistic, wonderful. I would question if that's who you are. Like, let's figure that. Like, is that, because let's talk about what it takes to do that. Because this is what it's going to take to do all those things, to get to there and do that on a broad scale. Does that give you joy? Does that give you joy to hop up every single day and record a video on some kind of new health tip or health trick? Does that give you joy to spend every moment of your day in the gym with others, helping them get healthier? Because if the answer is no, then the thing you're after isn't the thing forever. It might be the thing for now, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not the thing forever. And that's what we're trying to find out and figure out, I think, as human beings, is what's the thing forever that carries me through? I can have this conversation every day, all day long, because it is the thing that feeds me. I'm hoping that the people that are listening to this are inspired by this conversation to believe in the value of checking out who they are. I'll have this conversation every day, all day long, for the rest of my life, as much as anybody wants to have it. I enjoy it.
I think for me, one of the, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think for me, one of the moments that clicked for me when I started kind of trying to understand some of those moments, it was actually granted to me by being able to work at AccuLinks. And I was working with clients, helping them implement our products. And then invariably, like, a lot of these questions would get asked and about, like, how do we motivate our people? How do we incentivize? How do we better our processes? How do we create a culture where people are happier being here? And I'm like, why are you asking me this? I don't know any of these things.
Our software doesn't do that.
Like, I don't know this stuff. What do you, but I think a lot of them just assumed that, I did work with hundreds of contractors across the country, and they just are like, well, here's a guy who talks to contractors all over the place. Maybe he's got some ideas. And it was hard work to think about and give them some answers. But the results and what I found a ton of, not just fun, it was fun. I found a bunch of joy in it. And it was like this little light bulb went on in my head. I was like, I enjoyed this on a deeper level than just having a beautiful day of golf. Like, beautiful day of golf is amazing. Like, makes me praise God. I'm like, look at this gorgeous golf course, cool people to hang out with. I get to do a lot of hiking through the woods because that's where I hit the ball. Like, so that is fun. But man, working with those people on those things brought just a different level. And I was like, that's speaking to something inside of me. And so if somebody wants to start down this journey, or if they're on that journey, that's the thing I'd be paying attention to. Right? Like, when you're playing with your kids and you just have that joy inside of you, and it's fun to play with your kids. I play with my nieces and nephews and I have a blast doing it. Right? I have a feeling if I was playing with my own kids, it'd probably feel a little different. Right? So if you're playing with your kids, or you're having a date with your wife, or those things in your life, when you feel that bit of happiness and joy that's deeper than just fun, like, that's the thing you want to write down. Like, what was I doing when I felt that?
Yeah, it is such an important thing. And it hurts me on the inside to see how little we think about it. As a group of intelligent, supposedly human beings walking the face of the planet, we're more caught up with TikTok and Facebook and this little tiny moment in time than who we are and what we're about for others. it rips at me on a daily basis. I told Michelle last night, I said, this is the first time in my life I've ever been ashamed of living in the country I live in. Now, I'm proud to be an American. I want to be very clear about that. But I'm ashamed of the way that we're acting. I'm ashamed that we can't sit down and have civil discourse between two different groups of people without acting like it's 7th or 8th grade. And then I'm going to one-up you. And if you really think about it, that's what's going on. We got two giant cliques right now. One of them's trying to be the cool kids. The other one's trying to be the cool kids. It ain't about being the cool kids, guys. It just isn't. So, unfortunately, we're out of time. Like I said, I could talk about this all day, but I have to have a meeting. If you got anything out of this today, if you felt like, hey, maybe this spoke to you a little bit, reach out to us. Either Nathan or myself. You can find us at ContractorCoachPRO.com. You can email either one of us. Mine's head coach at Contractor Coach Pro. Nathan's is coach at Contractor Coach Pro. Find us on Facebook, messages, listen to our podcasts. We're going to have to do more like these. Maybe even more for my enjoyment than yours.
We're going to do this whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think these are the important conversations we need to have. And I think more of them need to be had. I think we do need to start drawing a line in the sand of maybe what's right and maybe what isn't. Hopefully it helped you today. Thank you for being here on our 100th episode of Contractor Radio. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much.